Hey there, cats and kitties. I'm the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on Season 1 of the CW's Riverdale, a series based upon Archie Comics characters, and one that I just found to be very explosive and entertaining. And the entire season, going into it as a sort of lifelong Archie Comics fan, I was very tentative about it. I didn't really know if I would get into it, and it turned out I really loved it. I was drawn in and compelled by it. I got my sister involved, watching it with me every week, and we would banter about it back and forth and speculate. They really kept you guessing with the murder of Jason Blossom and all of the crazy ins and outs that were going on with all the families, the parents. I hated all the parents on the show except for Archie Andrews' father. He was the only sort of straight-laced, normal guy, not devious in any way on the show. And all of course, the main cast, KJ Apa, Lily Reinert, Cole Sprouse, Madeline Petch, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Camila Mendez, Casey Cott, everything like that. They were all brilliant, and I loved seeing Archie, Betty, Jughead, Cheryl, Kevin, and Veronica, and even other characters like Josie and Valerie. You've seen briefly, though it may have been Moose, Reggie, Ethel, and even Dilton Doily shows up, Chuck, who is very much not what you would have expected, Pop Tate, all that kind of stuff. And so I really just had a fascination with this show, and I enjoyed it. They kept you guessing. It's kind of interesting that Skeet Ulrich would play, FP, Jughead's father, and this would be a grand sort of mystery where they were twisting and turning the story every other week, keeping you on your toes, keeping you guessing, like the movie Scream, that Skeet Ulrich, goes back to like the 90s. I loved that film, that whole trilogy, and it was very much in that vein. They always kept you guessing what was going on, what was with the murder of Jason Blossom, how did it all shape up. And I will say, second to last episode of the season, they debuted who killed him, and this person who killed him, I will not ruin that for you here in case you haven't seen it, but that was my first suspect that I guessed at, personally, was probably the one responsible. But then the entire season long, they kept me guessing. They kept me thinking, oh, is it Cheryl? Is it, one of the parents, Betty's mother or father, and all these kinds of things. Even Jughead's father, and then his Southside Serpents, any one of his cronies and everything like that. All through the season, they really made it a guessing game. And that was a lot of the fun. Also seeing these characters reinterpreted, especially for someone like me, who is somewhat of a lifelong Archie Comics fan, and I actually have the proof, the pedigree that I will be showing momentarily. For those who are unaware, I've had a lifelong on-again, off-again love affair with comic books in general. Superhero comic books mostly. Comic book movies, the likes of the Avengers back here on my wall, Man of Steel over here, Harley Quinn over there, and these are, of course, are the movie incarnations of these, beloved characters. Love them or hate them, it's up to you. I love them. And but superhero comics were not my first foray into the comic book medium. In fact, I guess you could arguably say my first debut to that was comic strips in the form of Garfield and Peanuts and the Gang, Charlie Brown, Snoopy, Calvin and Hobbes, things of that nature. But my actual very first comic book that I ever was debuted to, I found while rummaging around in my grandparents' basement, of all things. I found this dustbin, and therein was this comic that I still have to this day. This one right here. It's in plastic to keep it preserved because it was life-altering, for me, where I just was debuted to this whole world of the comic book medium through this one book. And you can see everybody is in play. Archie, Betty, Big Moose, Jughead, Big Ethel, Veronica, Reggie looking particularly toothy, and devious, about to steal the family album of Archie. And I came to find, I think this was like a religious publication to boot, which is weird. But Archie Comics, that is to say, has never been one to shy away from weirdness. And just for the sake of, proving that point, Archie and the Ninja Turtles, Archie and the Punisher, and things of that nature. And that's very much what this show turned out to kind of be for me. It was an interpretation that I was least expecting. And because, most of what the Archie comics are just fun-loving comedy skits and sometimes deeper stories, things of that nature. They actually had, which I also have the first issue of, a Archie Comics superhero comic. And And this actually blew my mind because at that time when this came out, I was very much into superheroes and things of that nature. You know, the Justice League, the Avengers, all that kind of stuff. More so DC Comics than Marvel, I have to admit. But it was a fascination for me, and like, to just show you how deep down the rabbit hole I personally have gone with Archie Comics, I took to writing letters to the Archie Comics publishers. I also have a letter I got in response, just to show my pedigree. This was a letter from the Archie Comics Publications Incorporated responding to a letter I wrote, trying my very best, my damnedest, to enter a photo contest. And I actually have the letter here from, again, the Archie Comics Publications people. I don't know how well you're going to see that because of the light, but this is actually a letter from Victor Gorlick, the at the time editor, and it says, "Dear John," written February 24th, 1992, we received your photo for the I Love Archie photo contest. It is a little dark, so enclosed is an example of how you could take a better picture, more close-up, and better lit. I don't know why your previous letter was not answered. We answer every letter that comes in. Guess I'd written them several times, hadn't heard back. In any case, thanks again for your letter, and thanks for making Archie Comics your favorite comics. Sincerely yours, Archie Comics Publications Incorporated, Victor Gorlick, editor. And what was really special about this was, I don't think I ever had success in taking another photograph after this. But just to give you an example of what to go for, I got this, written by artist Joe Pepitone, drawn I should say, and written. And this says, of course, you could pause it, but I'll read it to you just to save the time. Great Archie collection, John, but your photo is too dark. If possible, have your mom or dad take a picture of you like this and really show off your Archie Comics. A daytime photo would work great. Joe Pepitone, art director. And so I've really genuinely had a lifelong love affair with Archie Comics. Again, they were my first comics ever. And so going into this show, Riverdale, I really kind of sort of had, you know, a chip on my shoulder, like, they better not be messing with my Archie Comics. You know, like, I was seeing the casting, and I was seeing, you know, like KJ Apa before he had the red hair, and Cole Sprouse before his hair was black. And I mean, it was just like, what is this going to be? What is this show going to be? And it ended up being thoroughly engaging, compelling, entertaining, again, keeping me on the edge of my seat. From the first sort of twist in the story that Archie and Miss Grundy had a thing going on, and you're like, is this really Miss Grundy? And I suspected not. I didn't know what, you know, how that was all going to play out exactly, but we find out that the woman pretending to be Miss Grundy took on this identity. She was on the run from a bad relationship, something along those lines, and you know, they tried to misdirect you. She had a gun in the car. Oh no, you know, Jason Blossom was killed, probably shot, and all this stuff. So again, playing into that misdirection, but you felt really bad for the woman who had taken on this persona. And I love that, I think it's Betty finds an old newspaper clipping, I think it might have been actually Betty and Veronica both, of the real Miss Grundy, and she looked very much like the comic book Miss Grundy and everything like that. You know, like in the early going of the season, of course, Archie and Grundy were out by the lake. This is where, of course, Jason Blossom went missing. This is where Dilton Doily and his like scouts had found Cheryl, and she was in shock. And you find out that all of the melodrama surrounding that was much deeper and much crazier. You know, they flipped on their ears a lot of the character traits. I mean, for the most part, you begin with Betty sort of fancying Archie. He kind of likes her, but you know, he's kind of drawn toward other chicks all throughout. You know, from Veronica, who's the new girl in town, to Cheryl, to Valerie, everything like that. It was interesting because, of course, anyone familiar with the Archie Comics characters, there was the band, the Archies, which was pretty much the whole gang. Even Reggie, who was kind of the a-hole always, you know, even he was part of the band. And they all performed together. And I was wondering how they were going to, you know, if they were even going to bring that into the show. But I like the fact that they made that more focused on Archie himself. And, of course, Josie and the Pussycats. They are the musical group for the area. But, you know, Archie has this passion for music in the show. And that very much touches upon that Archie's aspect. You even get, you know, Veronica involved as backup singer or a duet singer with him on a couple occasions. And I love that his father supports him. Again, the only sort of good parent, air quotes, on the show, the only decent one, an honorable one, and likable one, as far as I'm concerned. I hate all the rest of the parents for the most part. I even thought, like I say, Betty's mother might have been the one who killed Jason Blossom because of all the intertwined hellacious stuff that was going on between the Blossom family and the Coopers, and the whole aspect of Betty having her, a sister, and she had a brother in the comics. We found out in the finale what happened with that for the season. And they'd already dropped hints, so you could pretty much speculate, maybe, this kid was given up for adoption or something like that. If not completely, gotten rid of. But it was something that, Betty's mother did not actually want for herself, and it was something she was kind of forced into by Betty's father. And so that, again, entering the melodrama, the craziness in the Cooper family, and every one of these families are crazy. Even Betty herself, we saw when we found out that the Chuck character, the version of Chuck that exists in the show, who is actually sort of a comic artist in the comics and everything, and a very likable character, whereas in the show, he's kind of a slut shamer, he's a womanizer and everything, and we see Betty and Veronica deciding to, pay him back for that, getting Ethel involved as well, because she was one of the victims of this crew of guys that were doing this, being very misogynistic and slut-shaming and whatever like that, trying to get the best of these girls, undeservedly so, and wrongfully so. And so, of course, we see Betty kind of losing her mind a little bit. I mean, she's digging those nails into her palms 2 and 3 times throughout the season to the point of bleeding, and she puts on the sort of bob wig, and she's decked out in the lingerie, trying to seduce the Chuck character. They tied him up in a hot tub, drugged him, and she's losing her mind. She's taking on the persona of her own sister and everything like that. It's just, it's wacky, and it's on its ear. Everything is flipped on its ear. And I didn't know if I was going to like it from the word go, but I ended up really just loving it. I mean, you cannot not be smitten with all of the chicks on the show. I mean, I've loved Betty and Veronica and Cheryl and Josie and the Pussycats in the comics all my life. So it's like, of course that's going to bleed over into the show. My favorite character subsequently on the show is my favorite character from Archie Comics. And let me punctuate that with the next several comics I'm going to show here, which are my man, Juggy, Forsyth P. Jones himself. And this was back in the 90s as well. I don't remember when exactly this was. 1992, actually the same year I got that letter. And this was a reinvention for Jughead, where he was a skater and kind of punked out, and still loving the burgers very much, and the food and whatever like that. And so I got a few issues of this particular stint where he kind of had a new crew going on and everything, and I love the diversity there, and which they kind of put into the cast of the show as well. Which I'm always appreciative of. But yeah, I mean, as the season rolls on, and you still have this mystery, I mean, you find out that the leader of the Southside Serpents is Jughead's father. He is displaced. He ends up moving in with Archie and his father, and, just so much of that. I mean, with this mystery unfolding, they start to suspect that, FP, Jughead's father, is probably the guy who killed Jason Blossom, and, this really wreaks havoc between Cheryl and Jughead, puts Jughead very much on the spot. And Cole Sprouse's Jughead, I mean, I just love his sort of loner outcast portrayal of this character that's kind of sort of the way the character has always been in the comics. He's always traveled to the beat of his own drum. He's always been very much a nonconformist. He very much like, I wish the best of us could always encapsulate for ourselves. We're being true to ourselves. We're not trying to appeal to everyone else. We're not trying to be something we're not. That's very much how the character is molded and shaped in the show as well. And I love that he is someone who has a passion for writing, as I myself do, and being creative, making the videos and everything like that. His character really spoke out to me and is my favorite among the cast of the show as well. I mean, the entire range of emotions have been displayed by all the characters, really, but most effectively so, I feel, by Cole Sprouse as Jughead. And it really killed me I think it was the second to last episode of the season, where his father's been arrested, and he wants to get out of Dodge. He wants to get out of Riverdale once and for all. And so he calls home. He calls his, well, at least the newfound home of his mother and his little sister, Jellybean. And he's shot down. And he knows he has nowhere to go. He doesn't know if he has any faith in his father anymore. And he can't just, keep surviving by the handouts of the Andrews family. And as good as that would be, and he just breaks down and, yeah, it's all right, don't worry about it. And it killed me. It freaking killed me. That whole affair, and just the punctuation to the fact that really can be said about all of the characters on the show, from Archie, Betty, Jughead, Cheryl, Kevin, Veronica, the families, the parents and everything. Everybody has something emotional going on. Even Josie, who's kind of more relegated to the background, the whole relationship between she and her father is explored. He's a music producer, I think it was, and has a really sort of cut and dry interpretation of what real music is and what real performance is. And he wants the best of the best of the best for his daughter, but he's constantly let down because of his highest standards. And so you see the heartbreak that causes for even Josie. And with Archie not being able to decide between Betty and then Veronica and then Valerie, and Valerie cutting him off and everything, which is something that goes back to the comics. They had a brief stint of a relationship. And actually, I want to reference one other comic before the end of this video. That is the comic book that I guess you could say was short-lived, called Riverdale High. And this was actually from 1991. And you can see, as depicted on the cover, Betty and Veronica are quite shocked that Archie's gone out with another woman. Who could that woman be? And this is actually one of my all-time favorite Archie Comics stories, where it turns out it's Big Ethel. She has a train expo ticket. There's this big train expo in Midvale. And so, she's got this extra ticket, and Archie has really a big-time interest in going to this thing. She asks, would you like to go with me? And, of course, when he arrives at her doorstep, she is all decked out. She's very excited to go with him, and they just have a hell of a blast. And it's something, because Big Ethel has been long-suffering in her romantic interest in the comics, in any case, with Jughead. I love this whole page. Them dancing, them having a great night out. And especially being in middle school at the time. I mean, this was romance to me, going out with this girl who was a little less than popular, always sort of pining for someone she could never really get the interest of in Jughead, and Archie really sort of having the hard time, if you will, choosing between Betty and Veronica. Having found, this relationship, brief though it may have been, with Big Ethel, I just loved it. And it spoke to, that's what I want. I want to find that, And to a degree, that carries over to the show. One criticism I will have is, it kind of skirts the line of more typical CW fare in the way they depict the relationships and everything between Archie and the girls, which are all lovable as all hell. I mean, some of them are scary, let's be honest, but I've been smitten with every single one of them. Betty, Cheryl, Veronica, Josie, even Valerie, and things of that nature. And I've actually really enjoyed seeing the whole gamut represented, especially in Kevin and his relationship with, was it Joaquin, I think? The Southside Serpent, it was a little bit questionable, in his ties to FP and all of that stuff. And as I say, when you finally round out toward the end of the season and you find out who killed Jason Blossom, why he did, it's mind-blowing. And again, I don't want to spoil that for you here if you haven't seen it. I can no more than highly recommend check out this series, because it's just intriguing. Even if you've only ever had a vague familiarity with Archie Comics, you might be that much more into it for that, without the familiarity. But even I myself, who has had a lifelong passion and love and fascination with the Archie Comics characters and all the various incarnations there have been over the years. I haven't really been around for a lot of the stuff that's happened in like the last decade, but I was very much, you know, happy with the debut of Kevin Keller, and I like that his character carries over into the show, and I hope we get to see more from him in the second season. I know, you know, Hiram Lodge is going to be entering the fray, getting out of prison, and it's just really, I got to tell you, watching the finale, I was like just on the edge of my seat because they showed the preview a week ago. This is being recorded the same night that I watched the you know, the finale for the season, and the preview showed Archie punching the ground very viciously so, and my gut reaction was something happens to his father to get him that all bent out of shape and going, you know, back on him. You know, I was very fearful that something happens to his father. And that whole aspect of being manipulated by the lodges, Hermione Lodge and Hiram Lodge from behind the scenes, and using the Southside Serpents, and you know, the stand-up guy that Archie's father is, he's not going to back down. He's not going to be played with. He's not going to be a toy, a pawn in this game. He's not going to be run out of Riverdale by the lodges, by, you know, the Blossoms, whatever like that. And by the end, of course, you know, we have the unfortunate scenario of Jughead being displaced, having to go to the Southside High, and it looks like he's actually going to fit in there veritably well. He's also been taken in by the Serpents. You know, they're going to take care of their own, and he's part of that because his father didn't rat on any of them. And so, like, the whole finale episode was fantastic. I was enjoying it all. Even Cheryl burning her mansion down to start fresh after all the hell that happened and all of those tears she shed for the Blossom men, and as she puts it. But so how are you going to punctuate the ending with something that just made me incredulous, made me exclaim loudly, "No!" No! And it played exactly into my fears and my speculation that something is gonna happen to Archie's dad. I'll leave it there. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't already seen it, but something happened and I don't like it. I hope he's gonna still be around for season 2. Molly Ringwald, actually, I'm a longtime fan of The Breakfast Club as well. Always kind of got Archie Comics vibes from that kind of setup, that kind of film. And she shows up as Archie's mother, which was awesome. And so, I mean, overall, I've loved Archie Comics all my life, almost. And being my first foray into comics, I had a real deep attachment to these characters. I mean, they talked about maybe doing a movie or a TV show a while back that was going to be like, you know, The Walking Dead. The Archie characters dealing with zombies and such like that. Or even a mystery show that was more akin to Scooby-Doo was how it was described. And I was like, no, I don't want to see any of this. But this show proved to be awesome. I absolutely loved it. The entire season, and like I can't wait to own it on DVD eventually. And I'm really going to be curious to see what happens in the second season. I didn't think they could actually go out with such a controversial, divisive ending as they did for the finale. I'm really not happy about that final shot, no pun intended, that Jughead in his, you know, literary nature describes as being something that did not happen by accident. And it was probably the signaling of the clarion call of the innocence that Riverdale has always represented. But, I mean, what innocence? It goes all the way back to the fight between, you know, the Coopers and the Blossoms ages past, brother on brother, killing each other and all that stuff. And, you know, if you've been watching the series, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below what you thought of it. If you loved it and enjoyed it as much as I did, if you were compelled by the twists and turns as much as I was, and love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below. But yeah, it was a pleasant surprise of a series, kept me on the edge of my seat, kept me thoroughly entertained all throughout. I love the cast, I love the characters, Jughead being my favorite, just as it was in the comics, and bring it on. I can't wait for season 2. That'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.